we will begin. Okay, so let's just do a quick roll call. I see we have Kyle present and Sharon present, and we are awaiting Kevin's arrival. I spoke with him briefly earlier today, and I expect he'll be joining us. With that, I would like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes that were sent out that Sharon took for us. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes, provided you had all a chance to see them?
I can move just for discussion because I do have a question.
Sure.
I'm not sure if it's a change or not. So
Okay.
move to adopt as discussed.
Okay, all right. Sharon, do you want to second that?
Second.
Okay, so let's discuss. Go ahead, Kyle.
Under number 4, I kind of recall this, and it's actually highlighted for some reason. We were going to try and talk in last week's general commission about how to kind of capture findings. Well, that didn't come up, and time was definitely an issue with new business. Is that really how you guys remember that? How well you remember our meeting on Monday? Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So I don't see any need to make any changes. So I would amend and just move that we accept the minutes as they have been distributed.
Okay. Quick question for you and Sharon, Kyle. So where I made some adjustments in bold and then highlighted in yellow, those were points I thought we might want to entertain some amendments. So I put some text in there and wanted to make sure that what I inserted and highlighted in yellow was acceptable to you. So Kyle and Sharon, are you in agreement with what additions I added then? Okay, it's all highlighted.
Just see the two, basically the one stricken line and the one additional.
Okay, so then right? Under item number 6, established guest speaker list, I elaborated a little bit on Sharon's last bullet point there, which said to work on a findings list, and then I edited the text to say, take note of what has gotten us to this place in our committee work, findings in fact that justify our decision to move forward. That's what I edited in there, if that makes sense to you all. Yeah, Sharon, you're nodding your head.
That's good.
Okay, and then Sharon, I edited slightly to try and reflect a little bit more clearly what Linnea Anderson spoke to in the public comment under point number 8. I just added some words there that I think captured a little bit what she said such an oversight commission might look for in terms of data related to decisions taken by the courts, et cetera, and trends analysis and that. So I just wanted to make sure you all were okay with that edit that I did. Yeah.
Cool. That's how we left it.
Does that look okay, Kyle, to you?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. So excellent. So I think that's probably all the discussion we need of them. Can I take a vote to approve the minutes as edited? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all 3 of us. Excellent. I had one related question, and that was pertaining to the notes that Sharon, you so beautifully type up for us after every meeting. It's so appreciated. And I felt like we probably don't need to approve those notes into record, so to speak, but they will be a record for our Microsoft Teams file. Are we all on the same page there and understanding there in that regard?
I don't have any strong feeling on it in terms of formal approval. I guess if it's in the record, somebody does have to take a peek at it each week. Maybe that's the chair. Sure. I don't know what the legal requirement is, because it's a tracking of a conversation. we don't approve our video. I guess the
It's all
video is just.
recording.
Okay,
Say again.
We have it in the recording. I just, I take notes if we want to quickly refer to some of the stuff that was said or that happened in the meeting beyond the minutes.
right.
But,
right.
I have no problem if somebody would like to approve them and make sure they're accurately reflecting the recording.
Yeah, my sense was that they don't need to be officially approved within this meeting per se. What we're approving is the actual minutes to the meeting. And as you both said, yeah, we're recording the meeting, so that goes on record. The notes are really just additional information for our reference. And I agree that probably the chair should, Sharon, when you flip those over, the chair should be the one taking the look through the notes and for consistency and maybe just mentioning if any edits are suggested. Does that seem reasonable?
Works
Yeah.
for me.
I think I
Okay.
sent, I'm not sure if I sent it to you, being that you two are co-chairs and Kevin's the only person on the committee, I probably sent it to all three.
Okay, yeah, I think last week you might have just sent it to me, but
Oh, okay. I should definitely send it to both you and Kyle.
okay, yeah, sure. Okay, and there's somebody named Mickett trying to enter the waiting room. Should I let them in? Just kidding, it's Mike T. Sorry, it was a joke. It was a bad joke. Okay, all right. Hello, Mike. Hello.
There he is.
Thank.
And Kevin just texted back, something's going on for him. He will call in a few.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. All right, so let's welcome then James and officially thank him for being present with us today, and also thank Mike for joining us as well. Given that some of the questions we're interested in exploring are ones that, relate to both of their mandates, if you will. And James, I think that you're speaking to a different committee than the operations committee that Maureen was chairing, and I apologize that we're dipping into some similar terrain. I think we're doing it from a slightly different lens, if you will, although there could be some overlap. And so we really appreciate you speaking with us as well,
Sure.
taking the time. I kind of blasted out a number of questions that I thought might reflect the general interest we had in how, from the human resources department side, you're managing issues of justice, equity, and diversity, and in living out your personnel policy day to day. And so I was hoping that those would just sort of be food for thought for you to consider as you speak with us about the policy, about your experience with the policy since you've been in your position, and its congruence with the resolution that was passed middle of last year, resolution number 31. And so are you okay with just kind of free forming it a bit? And
Sure.
were those questions reasonable?
Yeah, I think for the most part, just a little background about the policies and myself. So I was hired late 2016. And really the first project I took on was updating the personnel policies. They were written and revised last in 1991. So they did need quite a bit of work. So we updated those mostly in 2016, early 2017, and they were later adopted through ordinance, which is how the charter calls for them, late in 2017. And one of the commitments I had made to council is that we would do an annual review to make sure that we stay current. So we've done that every year since then. So the most recent ones were updated to things like, the Washington State paid sick leave program mandated that employers track and accrue sick leave for their employees at 1 hour for every 40 hours worked. We actually offer a better program than that, but we needed to change the language to reflect that. So we offer 1 hour for every 21.75 hours worked for full-time, and then it's adjusted based upon your FTE status. And then there were some other changes regarding reasons for eligibility for taking sick pay. Then there was a couple of other, like just typo things that needed to be adjusted for that one. Then we have the Washington paid family medical leave that came into effect last year that replaced the Washington basically Family Medical Leave Act. So that one was an update to that. And again, a couple of other changes. For example, there was I had drafted in one of my changes that the employees would receive for progressive discipline, that they would have a last chance warning notice or last chance notification. Everyone kept calling it a final written warning. So I changed it so that it fit with common nomenclature. It'd be just final written, things like that.
Yeah.
And then we have some updates that will go to council this year. So we had some updates to the IT policy based upon some new regulations and new structures, how frequently we need to update passwords and things like that. And then again, just some housekeeping things. But it's the whole idea is to be as current as possible and not get into we update it once every quarter century.
Huh. Yeah, no, I actually read, and now I'm blanking on where I saw this in Washington state law, but you're expected to annually ensure that you're in compliance with state law, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, well, how they have been doing it, I think to kind of get around that is they would make it adopted resolutions to the handbook.
Gotcha.
But they weren't actually incorporated. They were separate from it. So not everyone was necessarily was reading them. And then when the charter changed or came into effect in 2006, it said that the changes need to be done by ordinance rather than by resolution.
Okay.
Personally, I think they should be adopted by ordinance and then updated by resolution. Would be a lot less trouble and a lot easier to do. But if you were looking at changing any language, that would be one that I would change.
Okay. So adopted by ordinance, but changed by
or updated by resolution.
Okay. All right. So are you saying then, James, that would be a helpful adjustment to language in the charter at the current time?
I would think so. I mean, otherwise, once we have them done, it takes us, a month or more. I guess about 6 weeks, depending upon how frequently council's meeting, to be able to actually get the changes into effect.
Okay.
Because you have to notice your public meetings, solicit public comment. And when I do the updates, I send it out to all of our managers and elected officials to see if there's anything that they see need to be updated, or if there's areas where they felt needs clarification, or if there's been changes into their area. Like, for example, with the IT, I wasn't aware that there was changes in the IT policy, but Tony was. And so we do that to all of the managers and elected officials. Once they get that, I compile those changes into a single document, send that back to the review for any other changes, or make sure I've got it captured properly. And then I send it to both unions, because part of our collective bargaining agreement is there's two parts. There's the contract, but it's also adopting the policies. Those two things can basically combined become our contract with the employees, and to make sure that they're okay with them too. Once we go through that process, then the final one goes to council to look at, get any changes from them, and then we go into the ordinance to update.
Okay. Mike, do you have thoughts on making a modification such that updates could be passed by resolution and not require this passage of an ordinance? Or
yeah, I mean, administratively, like James said, it's a lot easier for us to do that. And if we're tending that document over time, the changes shouldn't be that big. Right. So it's really the most expedient way for us to keep that thing updated. I would just mention, other than you mentioned keeping up with state law, there's also other drivers. There's certainly, for us to be covered by the Washington State Risk Pool, there's mandates and training that come from there.
Yeah.
There's training we get via WASAC. There's stuff that comes out from Missile Research. And that's all stuff that drives the conversation and the need to keep the personnel policy manual updated.
Right. Right.
So employee litigation is expensive, and we obviously want to avoid that. So
Yeah.
James has done a really fantastic job moving us forward by another 25 years. So
Oops.
anyway, that's certainly in the past, but
Yeah.
but yeah, I'd agree with the resolution approach is most expedient. So, and it's not,
Okay.
you know,
Okay.
ordinance, you do a lot of times you do an ordinance because you want something codified. And anyway, I agree with James on that.
Okay. I had a follow-on question, but Kyle, you go first, and then I'll ask my follow-on question.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Mike, just a quick follow-up. You mentioned the risk pool, WASAC, and what was the third entity?
Municipal research
Okay.
is, Kyle, are you familiar with municipal research? It's a state organization. It's really a clearinghouse of information for local government.
Yes, I think we've we've done some of our own research.
Yeah,
so
they push out. I mean, they're great because they're very up to speed on you know, say you know, COVID leave, you know, what's the latest on that? Do we have to do that? And they're like, oh,
Right.
here's what the regulations are, here's a model ordinance, what have you. So they're really a clearinghouse that local government goes to for whatever kind of is the latest, or for background information, or you want to see what your fellow county has adopted on a similar subject. So it's just
Thank you for
another
clarifying.
another place to go.
One final question. I don't know if Maureen and her committee touched on this with you, because I'm assuming you might have flagged with them the preference to have updates to the personnel policy manual made by resolution instead of ordinance. I don't know, did that come up or not?
That didn't come up during our discussion.
Okay, so a follow-on question then for you is, to Mike's point about periodically, you know, having things codified by ordinance. I mean, should there be some time frame, in your opinion, when, you know, perhaps annual resolutions, you know, that take place, say, over a 5-year span, should then trigger, you know, an update by ordinance? I don't know. I'm just wondering, rather than, you know, 25 years from now having a gazillion resolutions that made, I don't know. I'm just wondering whether that would make any sense.
Well, the county code regarding it just says that we have to have a personnel system.
Right. Right.
So it doesn't specifically go into the details of what would be in it.
Right.
So I don't think that would need to be changed.
Okay. Okay. So it's okay then just to have changes made by resolution. And then you've got one sort of codified living and breathing personnel policy manual. And then there it is. And then it adapts and changes as needed annually by
Right.
resolution. Okay. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Excellent.
if someone came in and wanted to, you know, basically overhaul the whole thing, change things around, eliminate stuff, with, you know, then I would say is that, you know, that magnitude of change may be something that they would want to adopt by ordinance.
Okay. Okay.
I would be surprised that someone would want to come in and do that.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
It's a robust template. That's for darn sure. It's an extremely comprehensive manual for sure. So, okay, excellent. Thank you for that. So in terms of additional questions that we sort of lobbed at you, did you want to continue sharing with us, you know, some other background in relation to how you in your role have tackled evolving issues and changes with relation to justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, those things since you've come on board?
Yeah, well, there's been a few things. I mean, besides making sure that all of our policies are current and compliant with current state and federal law, I also developed a management development program where it's 10 modules for training One of those modules is the legal aspects. So we go over the Equal Employment Opportunities, the Americans with Disabilities Act, but it's, and many of the other laws, including like the Fair Labor Standards Act, to make sure that all of our managers understand, what the rules are. And I include role play scenarios, things like that, sometimes video clips to help highlight that. Also, during our interviewing selection program, I start off with a quiz about EEOC. It's about 40 questions. And then, but we review them to make sure that when they walk away with their handout, and it's a binder, it's about that thick, that they have a document that they can refer to. So I make sure that they have the right answers to those things. We do interviewing that's behavioral based interviewing. So it's really focusing on past experience, so that you're not really looking at anything that could be discriminatory. And basically, when I'm doing the training, it's if it's job related, you're pretty safe. If you start moving away from things that are job related, questions like, well, gee, Kyle, how many children do you have at home? That's not job related. And it's also a question that I can't ask. So, so by trying to focus on just job related questions and behavioral based answers, I think is important. Some other things that we've done on the diversity and equity is we've expanded our multilingual pay so that employees who speak another language, that definitely is that's always helpful, that they're eligible for an additional $45 per month because of that. So, so I think with the training and some of the other incentives that we put in place, we've moved the ball a little bit. And then I do kind of on an annual basis, just take a snapshot of where we are based upon our demographics to see how well we're doing. So you just look at what was most recently produced by the census versus the type of data that we gather. And it's the data that you gather is not 100% accurate because we can only ask people to volunteer their ethnicity or gender. But the law does allow us to guess, but we don't do that if they've given us an answer. We just take their answer. So, and sometimes that ends up with a situation like we have, for example, two employees who are related, and one says that they're Asian, and the other says they're Pacific Islander. Like, okay, that's what we're putting. Is whatever you said is what we're putting. I don't go in and say, yeah, I think really they're Asian, so I'm going to change it. So we take what they give us.
Sure, right, okay.
But but it does give me a little bit of a snapshot, so I can say, like, right now that we are pretty well compliant with mirroring our community. So our challenges for diversity is really the same challenges that anyone has with a community. Is how do you get people to come here and live?
Right. Yeah.
And ours are actually greater than most other counties because it's hard to commute here. I believe out of the 296 employees that are on the list, many of those, of course, are on call or temporary, but of the, we have 2 that actually commute from outside the county. And some of the positions you just can't do it.
Right. Okay.
So in other counties, you can hire people. Say you can commute into Seattle from North Bend if you want to.
Right.
But you really can't do that for our jobs here.
Right.
So it basically means is if we're out trying to recruit, they have to make a commitment to come live here for a job that maybe they won't make it through their trial service period.
Right.
Then what do they do?
Yeah, exactly. Kyle, did you have a
Well,
question?
just-
A long question.
Just the cost of living here too is a big challenge.
And we do factor in the cost of living. That's one of the things that we do in our compensation structures is it's heavily weighted towards the the Puget Sound region,
Hmm.
and we target the 75th percentile in our wages. So rather than most businesses look at the 50th percentile,
Hmm.
so we were actually saying as well, we'll go to the 75th percentile to try to get people here. But even then, that only does so much because sometimes they can afford to live here. They just can't find a place to live here.
Right, right. Mike, did you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I just want to add on to the comparator. So when we sit down, when we develop our pay ranges, especially when we sit down with, the guild or ASME represented employees, it's always, we are the comparables. And with ASME, we actually use Seattle and King County as comparator. So we used a really robust, in a sense, comparator data set.
We actually weight them twice.
Yeah, it was kind of loaded, but it's a reflection of what it costs to live here or to get here. So I just wanted to emphasize that the cost of living here. So we are comparing ourselves with Seattle and King County. We're not using Darrington and Puyallup or something.
Right, right. Excellent. Well, that's good. Kyle, you had a question.
James, back to the management training, even though the electeds aren't, spoken for in the personnel in the manual, are they included in the management training? If a full department is led by an elected, are they included in the work you're doing?
I missed part of what you were saying. You froze up for just a bit there.
I'm sorry. The management training that you were talking about that you do does that include the electeds and their departments, or?
The electeds are invited. So the last
Okay.
session that we had the auditor, both Superior Court and District Court judges attended. The treasurer, the assessor,
Does the sheriff participate?
the sheriff did attend. I think the prosecuting attorney was unable to attend, and I don't believe we had any council members attend.
Okay.
Okay.
And you may have said, I missed it. How often are you trying to accomplish that? Is that an annual?
We try to run the cohort annually. We weren't able to do it in 2020 because of the inability to meet, and I wasn't able to convert it to like an online or training program.
Okay.
I have done several other programs for online learning. As a matter of fact, you guys should have taken one, the board and committee members training. Yeah, that was mine.
Okay, excellent. So, James, could you speak a little bit to sort of the oversight in terms of compliance of the county government with their personnel policy manual, and what kind of, what mechanisms are in place to, just to ensure things are running smoothly, and is that Mike's role, or, what's happening in terms of making sure that things aren't going awry or anything of that nature?
Well, we talked about the oversight of how the policies are adopted, but it is primarily an individual manager's responsibility to learn and make sure that they're happening as they should. We do have a process where if employees feel like that they're not being treated fairly or discriminated against, that they know that they can notify their one-up manager.
Okay.
They can notify HR. They can go to their council member or to the county manager. We also have a dispute resolution procedure that's in the policy manual. And most of the employees, though, are covered by one of the collective bargaining units. So in
Mhm.
addition to myself, they can also go to their shop steward or one of the other union reps if they feel that something is not being adhered to properly.
Okay, okay. So those channels are working well in terms of, yeah, employees feeling they have recourse if they need to discuss. They feel, it sounds like there's quite a number of different avenues you could pursue depending on
Yes.
which one feels right for the situation.
Yeah, and for some of the policies, it's even broader. So
Okay,
on a discrimination or harassment, we tell them that they can go to any member of management with whom they feel comfortable.
okay.
And so if they feel like that they would rather talk to a female manager
Right.
about it, we encourage them to reach out to folks like Erica or Jennifer.
Okay.
If that's whatever makes them the most comfortable, any member of management knows that could be their role.
Excellent. Yeah. Okay. That's very good and very appropriate. Kevin, you look like you have a question, and welcome to the meeting.
Yeah, sorry for the delay and the video off. We have
No
had a
worries.
plumbing crisis and we have no water at our house. So people just showed up to fix it. And so I'm running back and forth to show them what's going on.
Okay.
So anyway, hopefully they can fix it. I was just going to say, James, I think I heard you say this, but I just want to clarify, not only could they go to another manager they felt comfortable with, but they could go all the way up to the county council if they felt that's who they wanted to talk to.
Correct.
And
Okay.
that's very clear to everybody. It sounds like your policy, everybody understands that if you feel threatened in any way or uncomfortable, you can go to whoever you need to go to.
Well, we express that. I mean, but you also recognize that there are times people are reluctant to go to their boss's boss,
Yeah.
or they may think that going to HR is like being sent to the principal. So, but I think we tried to develop relationships with the employees that they do feel comfortable coming to myself or to Bonnie, or directly to Mike or any one of the council members.
Excellent. Okay. Yeah. Oh, Kyle, another question. Go ahead.
Quick follow-up on that. Is that component, what you just said, James, is that in writing in the personnel manual, that potential routing for somebody for a concern or a complaint, that they can go beyond their supervisor?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Yeah,
Thank
I don't think we had an opportunity to pour through the document in full. James, apologies. It's a pretty weighty policy. But yeah, so thank you for that. If the committee doesn't mind, I have a couple other questions that are ones that I put in the email that Sharon kindly shared with James. I'm curious to know, related to question number 6. So in what ways does the county government make some effort in terms of a promotional effort or what have you to hire, people of color, minority groups, et cetera? I mean, is there anything in particular that's done in that regard, maybe with regard to advertising the positions or what have you, or where is your county government on that?
Well, my budget includes advertising positions for, in the local papers. If for other positions, we talk to the different department heads, because they're going to have to pay for that. But we'll advertise in like governmentjobs.com. We'll advertise in publications that may cater to specific professions. So if we're looking for a nurse or an engineer, we'll try to advertise in those. And we do include language to make sure that people understand that we are an equal opportunity employer, and that it's a great place to come work.
Mhm.
So, we don't have the budget to be able to go out. So I've done a lot of, on-campus recruiting
Mhm.
for, some juniors that are entering into their senior year or seniors that are getting ready to move on. But that's something that we don't really have just the finances to be able to do it. Coupled with the fact is it's also difficult for people to find housing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So our biggest challenge is really that,
Yeah.
is that people have to live in the county to be able to do that job. The other thing that we've been trying to do, and I think that one of the pluses of 2020 is I've had numerous discussions about, do the employees actually have to live in the county or live on a particular island to be able to do the job? And I think they're now realizing that many of the positions can be done remotely. And with that ability, to be able to absorb people who may live in other areas that are, maybe not as, I want to say white bread, I guess, as we are, that might be able to come and work for us,
Okay.
or people who may have disabilities but are completely able to work, at a desktop, that we'll be able to employ them. So I think that will help a lot, because there was some reluctance for people to be able to get used to that. You might have an hourly employee that you don't oversee their work, visually. So I think will be a boon to our ability to bring people in. There are some positions we can't, for
Right.
example, unfortunately our deputies can't work remotely.
Right.
They have to be here,
Right.
the front desk or front counter people, but there are other positions that we can.
Okay. Okay, excellent. Kyle, you had another question, or Kevin, Kyle and then Kevin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So James, on that last point, when you say, you said they a couple of times, pronoun wise, who's the audience for that conversation or for that argument about, is this department heads that are maybe, you didn't use the word reluctant, but I will, or somehow maybe it's not understanding that some of that work can be done. Who needs the convincing in your mind?
I'd rather not name names,
No,
but there were a handful of people that are at the department head or elected official position that feel like that, you have to manage by observation rather than manage by results.
that's all I was looking for, really, just positions as opposed to people. Thank you, though. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Wow.
Kevin, go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize if I missed this, if you already tapped on it. I'm interested on the equal pay side. So we now finally have a law in Washington State. I think San Juan County has done a good job of trying to really look at equal pay for equal work before that law passed. I'm curious, however, if we've ever done an audit or if we have an idea of any concerns there or any questions that have come up on equal pay issues.
Yeah, I actually did that. One of the first things I did when I was hired in 2016 was to do an analysis of where we hit. And we were actually really good. And part of that is because we don't have a lot of latitude in determining how someone gets paid. We follow a structure that was developed, I believe, most likely for the unions, and just maintain that same type of structure for our non-represented employees that says you get hired anywhere between step 1 and step 3, and then you get an annual increase on that. And the jobs are classified without regard to incumbent, so it doesn't matter who's in them. So that's how the ranking of the positions are done and how the increases are included. We did get through in the last round of negotiation that extended the current ASPE contract to get a little bit more latitude so that we could give 1 step increase for every 2 years of most recent experience, because we were having difficulty hiring people who might have 20 or 25 years of experience in another county, and they don't want to have to come here and start all the way over in their pay scale.
Yeah.
So we did get that, but that's experience based. But yeah, we don't have, say there's just not a lot of discretion in the way that we do our compensation.
And would you, thank you for that. Madam Chair, if I can follow up?
Sure, yep, go ahead.
Thank you. So just totally from the outside looking in, it also feels like promotions and department heads that we're pretty equitable. When I was a county commissioner, almost every department head was a man. And I really feel like that's changed. But am I correct on that?
You are correct. I mean, we are about 50-50 in our management
Mhm.
personnel.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and we are, of the 296 employees on the employee list, 163 of them are female, 133 are male. So we're a little out of balance there, but I think it's fine.
Yeah.
Because we're just basically hiring the best available talent.
Yeah.
Kevin, yeah, just I just received from Mike Saturday morning the data set that I had asked for
Oh,
in
excellent.
terms of, yeah. So I apologize. I didn't just turn around and flip that all back over to you all because I thought I'd try and make a little sense of it for you first and then feed it that way. So these guys were fantastic in pulling together this incredible data set. That indeed does bear out what they're talking about. So it's I just want to thank you both very much for the work your staff have done on that, and want to talk further with you about it in the way of like how can we share that information in a meaningful way to the other commission members so they too can get a picture of where you're at and how well you're doing in those efforts.
Can I?
If you can publish it in the aggregate without tying a specific gender or ethnicity to an individual, then so we can publish. It says based upon our head count in the county demographic, we should have 4 or 3.26 Asian employees. We have 4.
Right.
Right. That type of thing. Yeah.
Exactly. And so when I emailed Mike and you as well on Saturday, I think that was my intent, was to take a look at it and come up with some aggregate findings that would be meaningful to people, but not, I'm not comfortable with the whole data set, even holding it myself. But anyway, so I will circle back to you guys on that because it's sensitive data. I just want to be very respectful about it. But Kevin, it tells a really, really interesting story. So I think it's important that is shared. Okay, Kevin, you had another question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to add on the compliments too. I have obviously many friends who are county employees. And when I started with the Charter Review Commission, I reached out to several of them. I actually spoke to 7 and actually majority women and 2 LGBTQ. And unfortunately, none of them minority group, but that is also harder in our community. But I just wanted to pass on that across the board with the 7 people I spoke to, and James, they brought up you, 2 of them brought up your name particularly, and just not just complimentary, but really felt good about where they worked and how well they were treated. And the 2 LGBTQ particularly, and 2 of the women, I went into a deep dive, like, have you ever, and all of them were just like, no, this is great. Which was really, it felt good to live here and hear that. So I just wanted to pass that on. And James, like I said, they brought you up, and Mike, one of them brought you up as well. They work with you pretty regularly, and they just spoke very highly of the comment I got was that a lot of managers say they have an open door policy, and he really does. And that's awesome. So kudos to both of you.
Indeed.
Thank you. Although I do notice that both mine and Mike's door is closed right now.
Okay, if the committee doesn't mind, I'll ask 1 or 2 more questions from the list.
Please. And I apologize. I'm going to turn off my video and run outside and make sure I'm not having pipes blow up or something.
Okay, sure, no problem. Okay, so just I wanted to find out if you could you speak a little bit to, and Mike and I already had a conversation about this, but it was just between the 2 of us, and then I reported back to the committee. So it would be interesting to hear from one or both of you about, Resolution 31, 2020. And I didn't get to hear, the specific HR department heads take on breathing some life into that resolution in the coming years. And Mike gave me a good a recap on it and let me know that Cindy Wolf is kind of like the point person counselor who's working with you guys on that. But yeah, so just to hear your perspective on that too, James, in terms of what that resolution means and what might it imply in terms of doing anything differently, or implicit bias training, if that's something on your radar, just things like, if you could speak to that a little bit.
Well, Mike and I have had many conversations about what can we do to make this actionable. Because, that was, my perspective of the initial one that was proposed and then what was finally approved was that, this all sounds good, but what are you really going to do? And Mike's position is, the action should be driven from that, but they shouldn't necessarily be part of the resolution. Hold on just a second.
Sure.
So
Somebody's getting a little noisy.
so one thing you'll know when you do a lot of calls with James, you'll know when the delivery guy is there and it's feeding time for the dog. So you're impinging on feeding time.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's getting close. They know when it's 5 o'clock. So,
Okay.
But some of the action items that we talked about was when we were in the right kind of position of maybe being able to do more outreach recruiting, in increasing the budget, or even hiring at least a part-time recruiter who would be able to assist with that function. Right now, HR and risk management is really just myself and Bonnie Cab. So, we're doing all we can just to maintain what we've got going. Some of the other things that we thought we could do is, we talked about being able to more fully take advantage of the women and minority-owned businesses. If we did something like taking all of our procurement and moving it into a shared service position. Right now, each department is responsible for acquiring their own supplies. It's not centralized. But if you could bring them all together, it might be a large enough amount that then would make sense to go out and either get bids for things like supplies and services.
I could share some interesting guidelines on that from United Nations Women, that organization in New York. They've actually got a gender responsive procurement manual that's been around since 2017, and it provides a lot of guidance on how government entities can sort of take that kind of approach.
Yeah, and then we could use our council people to lobby the state to make it easier for women and minority-owned businesses to get on the list. Because my understanding, and I know Mike can speak from experience, it's a very difficult, time-consuming, and expensive process to be able to get on the list. So I don't know how many local businesses, if any, are on that on the list, and that would be great if we could, not only be able to enter into those agreements, but if we could do it with a local organization, even better.
Right.
It's also oh, sorry. Kyle put his hand up. I didn't.
Oh,
Yeah, Kevin.
Kevin, did you have a follow-on comment on what James was just saying? And then Kevin, and then Kyle, you can.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. So it's also complicated. I looked at this quite a bit when I was in Olympia. There's also a really fine line between trying to reach out to a local, and particularly a local and minority-owned or women-owned business, and crossing the line with regard to not going out for bid and gift of public funds. And I mean, there's all sorts of things that you're right on the line of triggering if you're trying to select a business over another. They get complicated. So I recognize that and appreciate that you're trying. And when Kyle's done, I have a separate question.
Okay, excellent. Kyle, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to migrate a little bit. What you said, James, made me think of. So I'm not sure I know this, but where would I look? So for contracts for county business and the small works roster and things like that, where is it stipulated how and whether agents that work for the county or subcontract have to maintain some of these similar policies? Is that case by case, or is that spoken for somewhere already in how the county contracts? I'm not sure if that question makes sense.
Well, I would have to defer that one to Mike. I think he'd probably know more regarding that, where you go to find those.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Carla, are you asking what's required of our contractors, or how do we publish our work? Like when we put out a bid or we're looking for people. I think I missed your question, so sorry to ask you to restate it.
No, it's fine. It is somewhat that. So when the county looks for contract help, where does the county stipulate what the potential contractor has to do themselves for JEDI, or does it? And similar concern, is that included in some of the process?
Yeah, well, it's kind of a complicated answer. So some of the stuff, yeah, so some of the work that we say we want to, it's complicated. So a lot of the requirements that we have to deal with when it comes to JEDI type things are driven by requirements that are stipulated from the source of money we get. If we get federal funds, if we get state funds, they have requirements like anti-discrimination requirements, anti-wage discrimination requirements. And so since those are binding on those state and federal agencies, it becomes binding on us to use that source of money.
Mhm.
And then we have to make sure that whomever we hire with that money adheres to those rules and regulations. So that you'll see a lot of that in public works. And then I'm trying to remember, so just more local stuff that we our local contracts. James, I'm trying to think of the language in there. Yeah, it really just kind of ties to the source of money. We are actually a member of Municipal Research, and so our contracts go out to their public. It's called the Small Works Roster, and so could be a public works contract, type thing. It could be professional services. All of those firms have been vetted to be on that roster. So there's a vetting that goes onto there.
Okay.
So some ways, somehow, there's a lot of those stipulations are in contracts that we deal with. But James, I can't, if we talk about our standard form of contract, doesn't have that type of language in there. We have insurance, indemnification, stuff on term and pay and work, but we haven't adopted some of that type of language into our own standard form of contract for the county.
Okay, thanks for the answer.
Kyle, did you have a follow-on, or is that it?
Well, it was. I guess it was. I think it's simple. Maybe it's not. Is there space in some of those state and federal grants or funded projects, for the county to add more stringent requirements? And if so, you sort of answered that by final point.
I think it would certainly be something that we could take a look at, and how we might adopt that into our standard form of contract. So and by standard form of contract, through the PA's office, we have a whole list of contracts. So that could be professional services, maintenance, interlocal agreements, We just call it standard form of contract. So we probably have 20 different types of contracts that we enter into for whether it's another organization, professional firm, public works, what have you.
Mhm, mhm.
Okay.
Okay. Kevin, you,
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And actually, it was right along the same lines as Kyle. So I know that legally local jurisdictions can go further than the state. They can't go less than the state or the feds, but they can go further. And one of the things that I've been thinking about as part of the charter is how could the charter help mandate that? And it was interesting when I had these different conversations with county employees, and I have to say one of the people actually is an ex-county employee, maybe two of them. I wanted to clarify that. But what struck me is you two and others are there now and doing a great job. You're not going to be there forever. And at the very least, this is a 10-year scope that we're looking at with the charter. And so are there things that we could put in place that strengthen your philosophy and your wishes now and your good work now? And one of the things that I've been thinking about was exactly what Kyle was talking about was, are there areas where in procurement and in contracts and such, where you can put some things in there? And yeah, and it's not just on JEDI, it's also on the environment. You know, there's some different pieces there too, to make sure that the contractors we hire are required to meet certain standards as far as who they employ, how they employ, and so on. But the broader question I have for the two of you, and you can speak to that as well, but I was going to ask broadly, within the form of the county, I mean, within the form of the charter, like James, you were just saying, you know, that if you were able to have another person who specifically looked at some of those issues for you, that would be great. That's obviously not within the scope of the charter. That's a budgetary and a mic issue and so on. But within the scope of the charter, do you have any suggestions for us that we could do that would help you continue and maybe expand the good work that you're doing in this area?
and if I can just add an add-on question to that, Kevin, if you don't mind, and that is what we've learned in terms of what 5 of the other 7 county charters contain in terms of an anti-discrimination clause. In 5 of these other charter counties, there's an explicit clause that speaks to anti-discrimination, and ours and Whatcom County charters do not have any such clause. And so in speaking with Kevin about this earlier, it happens to be in the general provisions section of these charters, which seems a bit odd, but yeah, I mean, our county does not have such a clause in the charter. Would there be reason to have one? Would there be reason to do something more explicit along the lines of what Kevin is talking about in terms of embedding these principles within our charter and how our county government functions?
Well, I'd be willing to bet that most of the language you're seeing in the other charter counties that include that is essentially the same kind of language you would find regarding any type of anti-discrimination that's set forth under state and federal law.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think, you know, if you wanted to add something to it, that it basically should be a very simple sentence. It says that the county complies with, or, you know, adheres to state and federal law regarding its discrimination in employment, hiring, in contracting and so forth, because, you know, those laws evolve over time. And
Right.
You've got a charter that's going to be in place for 10 years.
Mhm.
You know, and I'm trying to do the same thing in some of our other documents, because, like, you know, technically right now, the anti-discrimination language that's in our union contract with ASME doesn't include some of the the minority groups, or you know, that
Doesn't include trans.
Beg your pardon?
It doesn't include trans.
Correct.
Mhm.
You know, because some of the things that have just been recently passed, so it would be easier to just say, as we comply with what the laws are,
Mhm.
you know, rather than putting in a document that's going to be a 3 or 4 year contract that
Right.
would then require amendments to make that up, those changes. So I think that something like that would be useful, but I would be reluctant to say it's put in language that's so specific that now you have to do some
Yeah.
kind of a mid-cycle change or review.
Okay. Okay. Mike,
And
did
that
you want
does tie into, you asked in one of your questions about Section 8 of the charter, which has the exemptions to it. And most of those make sense, although, I did discuss with Maureen's group that I do think that the sections in the policy, although not cited as specific by the policy numbers, should apply to our volunteer boards and commissions as it relates to behavior that's discriminatory, harassment, violent, or bullying.
Mhm.
And that can be adopted through council,
Mhm.
or it could be codified in the charter. And then I would just add it to the language that we have, like in our board and commission training,
Mhm.
because basically we're telling you, look, you need to follow Robert's Rules of Order. You need to pay attention to the open public meetings and public records and appearance of fairness. And oh, by the way, here's how you treat one another.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. We may want to circle back to you on that yeah. So just quickly for follow up, Kyle. So if there were a place in the charter where an anti-discrimination type clause were included in our San Juan County Charter, which it currently does not, it would be one that is that can live and breathe with the legislation at the state level and
Right.
is meant to guide your county government to figure out how to do this, not be prescriptive, correct?
That would be my recommendation. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Excellent. Kyle, one more question from you, and then we may need to give it a wrap because we're at 5:05. But unless Sharon, did you have a question as well after Kyle? No? Okay.
Thank you. I
Excellent.
appreciate the time. So on the and this may predate one or both of you, on the boards and commissions front, is that something of a crime of omission, or was there some concern that might dissuade with an already sort of light response to all of those open seats? Was it I mean, certainly something that we have talked about addressing, but was it just not included, or was it thoughtfully kept out for some reason? Or do either of you know?
Well, I have had access to the charter, the original 2005 charter notes as it relates to the salary commission, and there's nothing in there that mentions why they might have wanted to exclude those groups. I have to say is the minutes from that very first charter establishing group about freeholders doesn't capture a lot of data. It just says, this was the decision, we voted and they voted yes. You don't get the discussion back and forth of how they arrived at it. I would say this is, with the exclusion groups, it's most likely as well with the elected officials, there's not much you can do if they don't follow them, because you can't fire the elected official. I can't cut their pay. I can't suspend them for anything. People could try to recall them, I guess, but that would be about it. Mike can take away their budget. But you really, there isn't anything you can do with an elected official. With volunteers and contractors, but you don't want to blur the line between who is and who is not an employee. So then essentially that then leaves you with your volunteer boards and commissions. And maybe they just assumed that they also were worried about that crossing that line. And I wouldn't have all the personnel policies apply to them. That's why I said I wouldn't list, if you make it apply to them, I wouldn't list them by our policy numbers. I would list them by the substance of those policies.
Okay.
Discrimination, harassment, violence, bullying.
That's a really interesting approach. And I think I hope I copied you all, both of you, on that information I found in the other 6 charters. Those exemptions exist throughout. And so it's quite interesting
Yeah.
that it's almost like word for word, those exemptions are consistent for each of the charters. So I think what you're talking about, though, James, is a very interesting approach in terms of saying there are certain fundamental there's certain fundamental conduct that is expected of you as volunteers sitting on commissions or boards. I didn't see that kind of language. I'll look for it in those other charters. I didn't see it, though. Okay.
I don't have a problem leading the way.
Okay. Okay. It sounds like it. Now, just correct me if I'm wrong, though. The county manager is exempt as well. I wasn't clear on that. Exempt from the personnel policy or not?
He is not. He's not
Okay.
exempt.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I didn't.
Like, hey, someone should have told me like 7.5 years ago.
Okay. Excellent. All right. Well, listen, if there are no further questions, I mean, we may circle back with some questions via
absolutely. Yeah.
email. We will likely circle back with some verbiage that we might want you to take a look at prior to getting, it ready to share with the PA. And if you're open to that, that would be wonderful. We will also circle back with that, some findings of that data,
Yeah.
and have some conversation around that. So from my side, I just want to say a tremendous thank you, in keeping with what Kevin always does as our chair, to thank you for your service and the excellent work you guys do, and also for your time today. And
Sure.
we really value it.
Great, thank you.
All right, thanks.
This
Appreciate
is
it.
really,
Right.
really great
now.
apart from what
It
you've
was.
already said.
Thanks so
Thanks,
much.
James.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
See ya.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye. Okay. Well, that was pretty useful, I think. Would you guys all agree? Kevin?
I do think, and sorry I kept coming in and out, guys. We're
okay.
in like full crisis mode here.
Yeah. No problem.
I do think that we can go stronger in language, and I would say that going beyond just saying we agree with the state. The example I see is on the state level, actually. California passed a law second year into the Trump administration saying that they will not go weaker than they already are, and any federal laws that were repealed or weakened, they would stay with the federal standard that was in the past. So basically the strongest of possibility. And while I don't see Washington going backward, I never would have thought the nation would have gone backward like it has over the last few years with some of our protections. And so I think at the very minimum, us having language that says, here's the bar that we shall not go below. And it's not enough to just say you won't go below what the state or feds are, because the state or feds could back up too. And so I think putting in some standards in our county charter would be something that would not only make a difference, but could also attract people to want to work here and come here, is recognizing that we have stronger protections. And as I shared just before I ran out, the union laws and the state until this year, actually, or until 2 years ago, didn't protect trans rights. So it talked about gender, it talked about sexual preference and so on, but it didn't talk about transgender or many other protected folks in our, or people that need to be protected in our community. So I think we should try and go stronger. And I really apologize, but I've got to run because there's people now digging up my whole yard.
Oh gosh. Oh gosh. Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you, Kevin. And glad you could be here. Okay. All right. So just quickly looking at the agenda for today. And I apologize. I didn't know how long that discussion would take, but I think it was a pretty useful and rich one from our perspective. So I'm glad we did that. Number 4 on our agenda, the composition and mandate of the proposed San Juan County Ethics and Justice Oversight Commission was the next thing we were going to talk about. And I was actually hoping I would have time today, although I didn't, to actually go from my notes from last week when Kevin was kind of nutting out a little bit, if you will, some of the things we wanted to capture in such a commission in terms of composition, in terms of mandate. And I can still do that and flip it around to you all in the next day or so to get something written out, like start writing something for what this commission what this body might look like. And it would give us something to chew on a little bit, taking as a source of reference the King County Commission and what's written about it in the charter. But Kyle, what are your thoughts on that? You just put your hand up.
I'm happy for you to do that. I thought maybe one of the things we could do is just share what we see. I mean, is this all? Is it 50% citizen? Is it 20% citizen? Is it is it 8 people, or is it an odd number for votes? Is it who from county current would be represented? And and I think that I kind of wanted to hear from Ms. Obenhaus too, and just see is there value kind of reflecting that approach, or is there value in going sort of 180 degrees on purpose, if you know what I mean, just to kind of make certain that the right kinds of people, whether there's turnover in that group or not down the road, making sure that it really reflects not just our population, but I would like us on the other topics and in some of the goal setting for the county. I'd like us, we've talked about the youth component. We've talked about, not just recognized as, underrepresented populations, but, other groups of people in this county that we don't traditionally hear from. So equity in a larger frame, and not just a reflective, a comparative population by census data, but a much more intentional. So anyway, from the makeup of that committee, maybe it can wait another week and take your notes next week. But I'd love to hear from Sharon too on what not represented and who would we want on that commission.
Yeah, we can certainly talk about it for a bit, right, for a few minutes right now, if you'd like.
I know we're late, so we're running thin.
Sharon, go ahead.
Well, I don't know, this is kind of on another topic, but it kind of plays into it at the same time. We are going to have Berto Gondara with us next week, and he would like some questions for us, so I thought maybe we could get at least a couple of questions together that I could send over to him. And this kind of plays into what we're talking about right now. How are we, how is the Latino community going to be?
Right, okay. All right, well, do you want to just brainstorm a couple questions now for Berto? And I was taking notes to what you were just talking about, Kyle, in terms of, some questions we may want to, I could send something out to all of you that you can think about and respond to me on, and we can discuss in more detail in terms of the composition, makeup, mandate of that commission. We could have a richer discussion next week, but you can feed in we can have an email exchange of ideas of our thinking.
Yeah, I would love to know what we're bouncing off of, if
Exactly.
the King County Charter, I don't want to reinvent the wheel on anything. If we, what has been working in other places.
Right.
County's a good example.
And we'll hear from.
I would only say that.
Yep, go ahead.
Lose the call answer part in the rule. I would love to have somebody, from the high school, for instance, on a position that's open and, maybe non-traditional. And I sadly, I haven't really digested the King County presentation for a while, but that's the kind of stuff that I think would be.
Okay.
We could certainly do that in the off time through the week and back and forth. I think that's a great idea.
Okay. All
And
right.
there's no stress on the meeting time, and we can probably make better action. So that'd be great.
Okay, so if you, and we will be hearing from Snohomish County on Wednesday as well, which will fuel our further thinking. So I'll put something together to get our discussion rolling so that by next Monday we can actually feel like we've got something we can start, looking at. And I will say that the King County Commission that they struck, it is pretty law focused. It is pretty focused on the justice system within King County. And so what we're talking about is a little broader. All right. So I'll be interested to hear Mr. Summers of the Snohomish County speak to their Human Rights Commission on Wednesday, because I think that's another example, right, that we could take stock of. So yeah. Okay. So on the issue that Sharon just raised about questions, oh, Kyle, I was going to say questions for Berto. Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, I don't want to hold that conversation up. I just want to say I'm more, as has happened many times during our opportunity to hear from county employees, the landscape doesn't look as dire. I wish we'd heard from James earlier. I really appreciate the work that they're doing, and it feels like there's much more going on and more intention than I realized, and it doesn't undo any of the goals that I have, but the work doesn't seem quite so much in a vacuum. Anyway, let's talk about questions for Berto.
Sure. Okay. So go ahead. Well, actually, sorry, pause one moment. We're at public comment, and I think Linnea is with us today, and we should give her the opportunity to say anything if she'd like, and then we can just continue on. And I may ask you if we can be 5 minutes over time today. Go ahead, Linnea. Welcome.
I have no comments today, but I'm really enjoying the conversation, and I'm so appreciative of the work that you all are doing. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, we missed your comments, but thank you for that one. Okay. Excellent. Okay. Questions for Berto. Quick brainstorm. What do you guys think? What would you like to know from him? But also, what would you like him to ask the community he represents, to Sharon's point, in the way of questions? Because it sounds like he can do a little, he can be a bit of an interlocutor this week prior to meeting with us next week. So what would you guys like? What are you interested in exploring through him?
Sure, look like you're ready to speak. No. On San Juan Island, I don't know the extent to which this is true elsewhere, but here it's not certainly not 100%, but in large part the Latin community is housed by and large in pods in a lot of the same space, or because of any number of different components and aspects of the community and aspects of the work in that community. There's one residential area where a lot of that community lives, and I wonder if that's true elsewhere, and I wonder if there's thought from within that community about how to change that, or if that's thought of as some kind of done deal, and how do you further mix the communities, and is that something that I struggle with it actually to think on behalf. I'd like to hear from members of that community about that topic and see if that's just an expected component, or if there's ideas about different ways to do just housing, or access to town services, or community services, including grocery, and if that's to what extent is transportation a component, all of those things. And I'm frankly not sure how to ask the question. I'd much rather hear what concerns or focal points the Latin community has for the rest of us, I guess.
Right. Okay. Sharon, did you want to speak to questions you're interested in?
Yeah. Here on Orcas, we live right near the housing community where there's not exclusively Latino population, but largely because they work at Rosario
Hmm.
at the resort. So there is an employee housing area at the top of Rosario Road. And, until the pandemic hit, and I have not done this in the last year, but on quite a number of occasions, I would give one or other of the employees a lift from the grocery store because they didn't have transportation. So I don't know what kind of situation they're in now with COVID having happened. And I don't imagine they were earning a tremendous amount of money working at Rosario, but in the last year, I don't even know if they're still here. I don't know if they could even have managed to have afforded to stay here. So I don't even know. And I haven't asked. So I feel kind of crappy that I haven't asked.
Hmm.
But I'm sure Berto can fill us in on that. But yeah, there seem to be challenges with people who don't have vehicles, or maybe they don't have driver's license. That was a problem before the pandemic. I can't imagine it improved. Although I have to say, I haven't been seeing, though, specific people that I would give a lift to. I haven't seen them recently. That said, we do have an expanding Latino population on Orcas. Parents with families and kids in school, in public school.
Hmm.
And so I guess I'd kind of like to hear how it is for them. Where are they living? Are they living more amongst the wider community, or are they living in like little ghettos because of a language
Hmm.
barrier, or
Mm.
something more insidious than that, which I tend to doubt, but it does need to be scrutinized.
Sure, sure. Yeah, and I think what I would add to what you have all said is kind of interesting because we're representing three different of the major islands, or each representing one of the districts. And I would say I'm aware certainly that there's a Latino population on Lopez Island, but let's be clear that population is pretty damn invisible, frankly speaking. We don't mix generally, and I mean I know that there are kids in school who come from Latino populations, and so my daughter, for example, in her class, has kids who come from Latino families. Um, those families tend to stay more to themselves. The kids tend to even socialize more to themselves. And so, my daughter's expressed an interest in getting to know some of those girls, and it's like it doesn't lend itself easily to social interaction and sort of mixing. And so what I'd be interested in asking Berto, through his contact with Latino communities is a couple questions along the lines of what you're talking about in terms of what are the challenges that community faces, what would be their aspirations in terms of further social integration and getting to know ourselves better. What are they experiencing in the way of any discrimination in terms of the provision of government services, along the lines of some things that Kyle has spoken to. So I have very similar questions to you. Given how separate that population seems to be on this island, as well. So it sounds like our questions are pretty similar. Do you want me just to throw a few together, or Sharon, do you want to throw a few together, or how would you like to do this, so that we can turn something around for Berto, tonight, tomorrow morning, so he can do some outreach for us?
Yeah, well, I don't mind. I'm happy to send him the questions.
Okay.
I'm just wondering, I don't have any more specific right now, other than asking things within the context of maybe what we just discussed just now, and what we spoke with James and Mike about. How are they doing? How are they
Okay.
doing in terms of, are they having problems with the deputies or with the Justice Department? Are they
Right,
having
right.
problems with neighbors? Are they having problems in school? How's it going?
Right. So
What could help them integrate more into the English speaking community?
right. Right. So Sharon, a question for you. Could you draft the questions for Berto for us?
Could you-
And
Hang on one second. Sorry, the phone is about to leave a message and I wouldn't be able to hear, so
okay,
just ask
could,
Mike to answer. Go ahead, say that again.
would you mind drafting a set of questions for us for Berto and just sharing them with us, and then we'll and then Kevin can have a look too, and if we feel we'd like to add any, we could send any additions to you. But it
Okay.
sounds like those ones, what you were just speaking about there, absolutely, those are all things I'm equally interested in hearing about, and I'm sure Kyle is as well. Kyle, does that sound like a good approach?
It does. And I'm thinking, or going to articulate some that I've thought of before.
Okay.
I wrote them wrote one of them in the chat. So, and I could certainly send them to you, Sharon, in the next 12, 24 hours, and develop a list and say, I don't know if you're thinking by Thursday or Friday in order to prepare for Monday, it's enough time, or if you have an idea when you want to send them. But there are quite a few, and most of them, most of the kind of the general snapshot ones, or place and time ones, are ones we've mentioned already. But I'm interested in what Berto is in. I mean, he's a citizen of the county, and has a number of different points of influence on Orcas in the church, within the Latin community, and by extension, through probably the whole county. I don't know what he knows about county government, or I guess that's sort of irrelevant. But as much as questions I have for him, I would like to hear from, in a similar vein, from anyone who's willing to speak from any of the tribes, to talk about what their priorities are that we're not hearing, or that we don't address, or we don't make audience for. That's the big one.
Right.
What are the things that the county needs to create audience for
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
various other populations that are somehow unequal.
And representation for. Yeah.
Yeah, that's another big one. And I don't want to presume that if you're, somebody, when I mentioned the family here that I would otherwise have wanted to hear from, they're fairly extended into county, junior government, and they are translators for the court. They both work in public service, which is fairly
Gotcha.
atypical here. And
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
wonder if, given more opportunity, if that wouldn't be more true.
Right.
From being actors on stage to members of other boards and commissions, or nonprofits, all those things.
Yeah, you just reminded me of something, Kyle, and that is that, for our Lopez Island School District, increasingly effort is being made to have translation in meetings that are held, and to, ensure that documents are translated for Latino families whose kids go to school. I think, what you just said really struck me in terms of, it shouldn't be a voluntary basis on which people are asked to do translation and whatnot. No, I mean, it should be, their skill set in terms of that language speaking ability and the outreach service that they can provide should be valued, monetarily. And right. And it should be, there should be money in budgets, for example, school district budgets, to allow for the hiring of people who have that competency, to help further the services to those members of the community. So anyway, I think what I'm going to propose, you guys, is that because Berto is interested in talking with some of the people he knows from that community, I think it would be good if we could finalize a set of questions for him by end of day tomorrow, so that Sharon can throw to him those questions. He can discuss them with whoever he would like, and then he can come back to us and share with us what he's learned and what his experience is. Does that sound okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Excellent. So Sharon, you lobbed to us your first cut, and then we can feed in and you get it off tomorrow night or whatever.
Good.
Okay, excellent. All right, so we really need to wrap because it's like 3 minutes. It's 3 minutes past the end time of our meeting, and I need to go get my daughter, it seems. But just looking at section 5 or agenda item 5, which is identify sections of the charter where issues of justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, and non-discrimination need to be reflected. Yeah, and the IDF from the process committee. That's I think we're going to need to kick that into next week's meeting. Oh, Kyle, yeah, go ahead.
I have a favor actually, and I hope it's on the burden, and I kind of wanted Kevin to be here also for it. Process meets tomorrow in the morning, 10:30, and one of the big work pieces for tomorrow is Bill of Rights, like really kind of the first pass, and everyone is meant to be bringing kind of an ideas list. If you're not all booked up both overnight, if you had, your top 10 Bill of Rights that you've been thinking of as we've sort of talked through this, I would love those. I mean, I don't have to be the carrier of them, but if you sent them to me, I would love to include those. There will probably be some duplication, which is fine, but we're all pretty busy. If that sounds overwhelming, I understand, but it's a good time to start plugging stuff in, and I'd really like to make some traction with that group to really get this. If we're going to do this document or do this approach, we need to be on it and have the master list kind of done sooner than later.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and I'll be sitting in on that meeting with you, Kyle, but I will, I can share with you, some thoughts I have on that, and sort of pass those over to you. And then Sharon, if you could as well, that would be great. And maybe we could reach out to Kevin and ask him to do the same.
Cool.
Okay. So, and that meeting's at 10:30, right, Kyle?
It is.
Okay.
Same
So
bat channel.
What's that?
On the same bat channel.
All right.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
did you guys see the feedback? The feedback on what we are for the climate and environment commissioner position. One person from a resident of the county gave us feedback. Somebody who actually supports all of what the committee wants to do, but was saying that the rights of nature thing is going to be very hot, very polarizing for the county. And he just gave a whole list of problems that are likely to come up. So I think we're going to have to look at that and just see how we can, temper this stuff so that it doesn't freak certain people out more than necessary.
What is it that you're referring to, Sharon? That was.
Well, that we're, for the climate and environment commissioner position, Kyle did a lot of work, extensive work on, kind of mapping out what the crossover could be between that position and the county. So it's something.
I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, that's fine.
As one of the people who attended the meeting is a neighbor of ours, and very, very thoughtful, and listened in, and then didn't participate in the public comment, but wrote a letter back to that committee, to the Climate and Environment Committee, mostly about what he saw as kind of the appetite of the public and how much they would tolerate some kind of advanced thinking and advanced work that, if you're the public and you haven't been following the meetings, it would probably come across as kind of aggressive, maybe, and we might all be disappointed because the public might speak very, very intently right away in the vote about not being ready for that level of impact. So, but one of the pieces there was about rights of nature and how that might be a total non-starter. So I think that was that the link to the Bill of Rights, Sharon?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be honest, and I'll raise this tomorrow as well. I am not. I share a bit Bill Apple's view that this might be a bit. it might be a bit too much for this constituency at this time. I don't know. I don't know what the general reception to a Bill of Rights is actually likely to be in this county. I'm a little concerned that the level of awareness and that sort of the cultural ethos in this county may not be ready for some of what's being proposed. But and so I don't know. I'm interested in having some discussion around that tomorrow, because we can all stick our finger up, and kind of think we can test the winds, but we don't really know. And so I don't know. I'm looking forward to the meeting tomorrow to hear a little bit more. But yeah, I'd be interested in seeing that communication. Is that something that was shared with the full commission or not?
I think it was
don't
probably.
so. Yeah,
Was it only shared with the climate and
I think so. Yeah.
environment? Yeah.
Not for no other reason than that was the
Yeah.
audience in the meeting. So I can pass it to you.
Yeah, I'd be
but-
curious.
I'll-
It
We'll do
ties
it
in
right
very
now.
much with the process committee.
Okay, yeah. Okay, all right.
Actually,
So
I think it went to Anne Marie, and she sent it to us. So I'll just send it to you. I'll send it on to you, Jane, right now.
okay, great. So let's kick agenda item 5 into next week. It looks like we're gonna have to revisit it anyway. And then in terms of confirming our guest speaker list, it looks like, so we've got Berto for next week. And then I've got it on my computer screen here. And if you want, I can just do a share screen on this, on our presenters, our sort of ongoing list of presenters. Would you like me just to do a share screen right now? And I don't
I
know.
thought we were in pretty good shape. We have it pretty
Did-
scheduled, don't we?
I can't recall now. Okay, guys, I might be a little outdated here. Yeah, I may have the wrong version.
Oh, you know what? I redid it after our last meeting. Did I ever send you guys a redo of the spreadsheet and the
Spreadsheet, yeah,
and the
spreadsheet,
speakers
but
list?
not the speakers. Spreadsheet, but not the speakers list, I
Oh,
don't think.
shoot. Okay, let me see if I can find that. And I'm okay with the time. Are you good with the
Yeah,
extra time here?
I'm gonna have to go in a couple minutes because of my daughter needing to be picked up.
Okay, let's
Yeah,
see.
I've got to head out in 5 minutes.
Okay. Well, there we go. Let's see.
So you actually updated the list then, Kyle?
Yeah, I thought so.
Okay. Oh, by the way, Sharon, just regarding those minutes, then what I'll do is I'll just I'll do that, accept the highlighting and all that, and I'll just flip those over to Catherine for posting. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. And then I'll get to her the ones we approved last week as well, so that she can post those too.
Great.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. And thanks again for taking those notes for us. Okay. So
For time, though, they're on my they're on my work laptop, which is here, but not super readily
Okay.
available. But I did, and I will send what I have tonight.
okay. Okay.
And I think it filled in nicely minus the move with Berto, which I can reflect there. It was updated, and I think it pulled us through the middle of May, actually.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah. If you could send that around again, that would be great.
Sure.
Okay. Excellent. And
Did we come up with specific questions for Jay Julius and Sharon Kinley?
no. And are they confirmed?
I don't think so.
Okay. And
Kevin was kind of on top of that, but I don't know.
okay.
I
And
think he wanted some specific questions.
Okay. Do you want me to email Kevin on that, or do you want to, or what do you suggest?
Would you be willing to do that? That'd be
Absolutely. And then I'll and I can put a call out to all of us as well for questions, okay, at the same time. Okay.
great. Thank you. Yeah.
Excellent. So I'll make a note to do that. Okay. And then I think then the last thing on our agenda for today is new business. Was there any further new business at this point?
It's not new, but I'd like next week to have an idea specifically of where else, if we do the Justice and Equity Commit, or Equity and Justice, SG Equity and Justice Commission or Committee,
Mhm.
Commission. Whatever we decide to do that, and then have a solid idea, just because of time, of where else we're going to take action and review into a charter amendment.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And for me, that feeds a bit into that second issue, which is I'm beginning to think that we do need an anti-discrimination clause in this charter, and we do need it to tailor it to, the information we're obtaining about how our county can continue to lead in some of this effort. And when people are no longer working for the county, those principles will still be upheld. And above and beyond, state and federal law. So I think what I'm actually I also wanted to share with you by next week, maybe some proposed text in the way of such a clause, and some ideas for discussion on where it would be, where it might land, based on what I'm seeing in other charters, just to feed. So I've kind of committed to feeding a little bit for you guys, two things next week. One is the outlines of what we've been talking about in terms of what the composition and mandate of that commission might be. It's going to be very, it's going to need lots of work, but, and then also what kind of article or clause might be introduced, and what might be its relationship to a Bill of Rights, because that's where I feel very vague. But so I'll just feed some fodder on those two issues for us for next week to, and hopefully I'll try and get that to you by Thursday if I can. I'll try not to overpromise and underdeliver. It's something I'm bad at, but so I'll try and feed you guys so that we have something to chew on next week.
Okay. I think that helps us set up for our agenda for next week, that I will promise to have Catherine before end of business on Friday.
Okay.
Speaking of over deliver or under delivering.
Yeah. No worries.
Okay. I would move to adjourn.
Okay. Is that seconded? All right. All in favor? Aye.
Bye.
Katie?
Bye.
Okay. Thanks, Linnea.